AITA for uninviting my parents from my wedding after they tried to replace my fiancée with my ex. I'm getting married to the love of my life, but my parents tried to replace her with my abusive ex. They even tried to sabotage my wedding, so I uninvited them. I, 30F, am getting married in 8 months to my fiancé, Elliot, 32F. We've been together just under 5 years. We own a condo together, split expenses evenly, argue like adults, and actually resolve things instead of keeping score. She's not flashy. She doesn't perform for approval. She's blunt, consistent, and the first person I've ever been with who makes me feel steady instead of anxious. Before Elliot, I was engaged to my ex, Marcus. We were together from when I was 21 until I was 26, and looking back, that relationship was a slow, grinding erosion of my confidence. Marcus loved being admired and hated being questioned. He needed to know where I was, who I was with, and why I didn't respond fast enough. He mocked my career and called my goals cute ambitions. Every argument somehow ended with me apologizing, even when he was the one yelling. I finally left after he screamed at me in public because I didn't laugh enough during a work dinner and made him look bad. That was the moment something in me just shut off. Here's the issue. My parents absolutely loved Marcus. To them, Marcus was polished, well-spoken, connected to the right people, and from a family they considered impressive. He fit the image they wanted. They praised him constantly and excused everything else as passion or drive. When I left him, my parents didn't ask if I was okay. They asked what I had done to push him away. They never liked Elliot. From the beginning, Elliot was described as too quiet, too plain, not ambitious enough, despite the fact that she's stable, responsible, and has never once treated me like an accessory. My parents tolerated her in the way people tolerate a temporary inconvenience. Polite smiles, backhanded comments, passive-aggressive questions about when I'd get this phase out of my system. When Elliot and I got engaged, everything changed. The comments stopped being subtle. I started hearing things like, "Are you sure this isn't just comfort?" And "You were sharper when you were with Marcus, and Elliot doesn't really elevate you, does she?" They said this to my face, sometimes right in front of Elliot, pretending it was a joke. I kept swallowing it because I didn't want constant conflict. I told myself they'd adjust. I told Elliot to ignore it, and she did, even when I could see how much it bothered her. 3 weeks ago, we went to my parents' place for lunch. Nothing seemed off at first. We sat down, ate, talked about wedding logistics. Then my mother put her fork down and said, very calmly, "If you wanted to make the smart choice, there's still time." I asked her what she meant. My father leaned back and said, "Marcus asked about you. He's divorced now. He said he'd take you back." I actually laughed because it sounded absurd. They didn't laugh back. They explained, in a disturbingly measured tone, that they believed I was making a social mistake, that Elliot was comfortable but limiting, and that marrying her would quietly close doors for me. My mother said ending things now would save embarrassment later. She suggested I frame it as personal growth so Elliot wouldn't spiral. I told them to stop. I said this was inappropriate and disrespectful. They didn't stop. My father said, "If you go through with this wedding, don't expect us to stand up there and pretend we're proud." Something in me snapped. I stood up, told them this conversation was over, and left without finishing my food. That night, my phone blew up. Missed calls, long texts, my mother accusing me of being dramatic, my father saying I was throwing away my future. An aunt messaged me on WhatsApp saying my parents were heartbroken and that I should be more understanding. The next day, after cooling down, I sent my parents a message. I told them clearly that unless they apologized to me and to Elliot for disrespecting our relationship, they would not be invited to the wedding. I said I would not stand at the altar knowing the people in the front row wished I were marrying someone else. They lost it. My mother replied that I was ungrateful and cruel. My father said I was being manipulated and that Elliot had rewritten my personality. He called me brainwashed. He said I was choosing a person over family and that I would regret it. I told him family doesn't get to audition replacement partners for my marriage. That made things worse. Extended family got involved. I started getting messages on Facebook and Instagram from relatives I barely talked to. Some were subtle, telling me I should be the bigger person. Others were outright hostile. One cousin told me I was selfish and attention-seeking. An uncle said I was humiliating my parents and acting like a victim. I didn't stay quiet. When my aunt said I was overreacting, I told her she'd feel differently if someone tried to reinstall her abusive ex like a software update. When a cousin said Elliot was temporary, I told him Marcus was permanent trauma. When someone accused Elliot of isolating me, I responded that I'd finally isolated myself from people who thought my life was theirs to manage. My parents started telling people I was cutting them off over a suggestion. That's when I posted screenshots of the messages where they pitched Marcus as a better option. I didn't didn't add commentary. I just posted exactly what they said. My father called me screaming. He yelled that I was a liar, that I was humiliating them, that I was unrecognizable. I yelled back that I recognized myself for the first time in years. He said Elliot had turned me against them. I said no, they did that all on their own. At one point he shouted, "You're destroying this family." I shouted back, "You tried to destroy my marriage before it even started." We ended the call yelling over each other until I hung up. Update 1. I woke up to my phone ringing at 7:12 a.m. exactly. I know the time because I stared at it afterward, trying to slow my breathing. It was my mother. I already knew this wasn't going to be a normal call, but I answered anyway because part of me still hoped, stupidly, that maybe she was calling to apologize. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't even say my name. The first thing out of her mouth was, "I hope Elliot realizes she's destroying this family." That was it. That was her opening line. I sat straight up in bed and said, "Excuse me?" She kept going, voice sharp and tight, saying Elliot had turned me against everyone, that I was unrecognizable, and that she couldn't believe I'd let some outsider come between me and my parents. She said it like Elliot was a hostile coworker who'd stolen office supplies, not my fiancé. I snapped. I told her she was the one lighting everything on fire by acting like my life was a group project she could keep editing. I said she didn't get to workshop my marriage like it was a bad draft. That's when she started yelling. She told me I was throwing away everything they built for someone temporary. She said I was embarrassing them. She said people were already talking. She said I was being selfish, reckless, and cruel. She said I'd regret this when Elliot got bored and left. I yelled back. Funny how Marcus was permanent while cheating and screaming at me. There was a dead silence on the line, just breathing. Then I heard my dad in the background say, "Give me the phone." He didn't ease in either. He said, "You're rewriting history because Elliot filled your head with garbage." That sentence hit harder than I expected, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed exactly how little they thought of me. I told him very clearly, slowly, so there was no confusion, "You don't get a vote in who I marry. You barely earned a seat." He exploded. He called me disrespectful. He said I was arrogant. He said I was acting like I was better than everyone else. He said I'd forgotten who paid for my education, who supported me, who made me who I am. I told him, disrespect is trying to trade my partner like a defective appliance. He shouted that Elliot was manipulating me. He said she'd isolated me, poisoned me, and turned me into someone cold. He said I used to be soft and reasonable, and now I was hostile. I told him I was hostile because I was finally done being talked over. He yelled that I was tearing the family apart. I yelled back that they'd started tearing it apart the second they decided my happiness needed their approval. At some point my mother jumped back in, screaming over him that I was heartless and that she didn't raise me to abandon family. I screamed that she didn't raise me to tolerate being disrespected either. Everyone was talking at once. No one was listening. It was just noise and accusation and blame flying in every direction. My dad ended it by saying, "Don't come crying to us when this blows up in your face." Then he hung up on me. I hadn't even put my phone down yet when my messages started going off. WhatsApp first. A group chat I'd muted years ago suddenly active. My aunt asking what was going on. A cousin saying my parents were devastated. Someone else saying I'd taken things too far. Another relative telling me I should apologize to keep the peace. I replied to one message saying I wasn't apologizing for refusing to dump my fiancé on command. That got screenshotted. Within an hour, my Instagram DMs were filling up. Some people were trying to sound concerned. Others weren't even pretending. One relative told me I was selfish and dramatic. Another said Elliot was obviously insecure if she couldn't handle my parents' opinions. I didn't stay polite. I told one person that if they thought being screamed at and replaced was an opinion, they needed professional help. I told another that Marcus didn't push me to be better. He pushed me into therapy. When someone said Elliot was controlling, I asked how controlling it was to respect my decisions instead of overriding them. Then Marcus himself entered the picture. He messaged me on Facebook. Just a hey, hope you're okay. Your parents told me you're confused. That was it. That was the message. I saw red. I replied, do not contact me again. You are not part of my life, my past, or my future. The fact that you think you have a role here proves I was right to leave. He replied that he was just trying to help, that he didn't want to see me ruin everything. I told him everything had improved the moment I left him. He didn't respond after that, but my parents found out anyway and accused me of being cruel to him. My mother sent a long text about how I'd humiliated a good man and how I was burning bridges everywhere. I told her the only bridge I burned was the one leading back to a life I hated. Update 2. My aunt decided to host a concerned family dinner. Neither I nor Elliot were invited, intentionally. I found out when 3 cousins started texting me, almost in real time, with detailed updates about what was being said. Apparently, my parents had told the whole family that Elliot was isolating me, that I'd become aggressive, and that I was cutting them off over a suggestion. They framed it like I was some villain in a family drama rather than a grown adult defending my life choices. I reached my breaking point. I grabbed my phone and posted screenshots on Facebook of the WhatsApp and Messenger messages my parents had sent to relatives pitching Marcus as the obviously better choice. I didn't add commentary. I just let their words speak for themselves. Within minutes, my phone started blowing up. My uncle called me. He was screaming. I could hear him pacing. He yelled that I was humiliating my parents and that I had no idea what I was doing. I yelled back that if anyone had been humiliated, it was them, by their own behavior and the audacity of trying to replace my fiancée. He called Elliot a placeholder for my supposed happiness, a word so ridiculous I almost laughed through my anger. I fired back. Funny, because Marcus was a placeholder for my misery. The line went silent for a few seconds before he screamed that I'd regret burning bridges and that I was selfish, ungrateful, and reckless. I shouted back that bridges go both ways and that the only thing I was burning was the bridge leading to people who thought they could dictate my marriage. He said I was being cruel to my family. I told him I'd been cruelly treated by the same family for years, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to be bullied. Meanwhile, my cousins started texting nonstop. One accused me of being dramatic, another called me unhinged, and one even insinuated that Elliot was controlling me. I responded to each individually. I told the cousin who called me unhinged that manipulation is gaslighting someone into abandoning their fiancé, not setting boundaries. I told the cousin who said Elliot was controlling that respecting boundaries is not control, and if they didn't get that distinction, they were part of the problem. Another cousin accused me of being selfish and putting myself first, to which I shot back that finally prioritizing my mental health over their image-obsessed obsession was exactly what self-preservation looked like. Then Marcus, because of course he's still lurking, slid into my Instagram DMs. Your parents told me you're confused. I can help. I could make things right, he wrote. I lost it. I wrote back immediately, blasting him for thinking he had any right to interfere. I told him he was part of the reason I left him in the first place, and that contacting me now proved exactly why I never wanted him in my life again. He responded with a smug, "I'm just trying to save you from a mistake," and I exploded. I typed a very long response about how leaving him was saving myself, about how my parents were now acting like he was the savior of my life, and then I blocked him before I could get any more worked up. Throughout all this, my parents kept calling me multiple times, leaving voicemails that ranged from sobbing confessions about their disappointment to outright rage about how Elliot was changing me into someone we didn't recognize. I let the voicemails pile up while I texted them that no further contact would be tolerated until they acknowledged the boundary they had crossed. My mother texted back that I was cruel, cold, and ungrateful. I replied that if she felt ungratefulness was cruelty, she didn't understand love, family, or respect. My father texted that Elliot was turning me against them, and I responded that the only person changing me was them, for the worse, by showing their true colors. Update 3. This week took a turn I absolutely did not want. Marcus, yes, that Marcus, contacted me. Out of the blue. He messaged me on Facebook, and his opening line was unervingly calm. Your parents told me you're confused. I want to save you from a mistake. I stared at the message for a long minute, my stomach dropping. Then I typed back firmly, if you contact me again, I'll forward this to your current girlfriend and my lawyer. He replied almost instantly, calling me bitter and resentful. I shot back that he should be grateful I don't publicly share why I left him, and that his attempts to manipulate my life now proved exactly why leaving him was the right choice. He blocked me shortly after that, probably thinking that was a power move. It wasn't. Of course, this led to my parents immediately accusing me of being cruel to Marcus. My mother called, sobbing and wailing about how heartless I was being, how I was hurting someone who still cares about me. I told her flatly, you handed him my number like I was community property, and now you want me to feel guilty for standing up to that intrusion? That call escalated quickly. My mother started screaming that Elliot had turned me hostile and manipulative. My father jumped in over the phone yelling that I was ungrateful, aggressive, and had somehow forgotten all the sacrifices they made. I told him, calmly at first, and then more sharply, that the only thing making me hostile was finally listening to myself and realizing what their behavior truly was. The shouting didn't stop there. Messages poured in from cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone who apparently felt they had a right to police my relationship. My phone blew up with Snapchats, WhatsApp messages, and Instagram DMs. One cousin called me a narcissist. Another claimed Elliot was controlling me. Someone else accused me of burning bridges and leaving a path of destruction in my way. I answered each message. I told my cousin calling me a narcissist that calling someone a narcissist because they protect their own relationship is ironic at best. I told the cousin who called Elliot controlling that respecting boundaries boundaries isn't control, it's autonomy. I told the person accusing me of burning bridges that the only bridges being burned were the ones built on manipulation and disrespect, not on mutual love. Meanwhile, my mother cried during one call, accusing me of abandoning family values. I yelled that abandoning toxic demands isn't abandoning family, it's survival. My father accused Elliot of poisoning me against my parents, saying she was the one changing who I am. I yelled back that the only change was that I finally refused to be told who I had to love and how I had to live. Update 4. I was at home with Elliot, trying to go through some wedding planning emails when my mother stormed into the living room, ignoring the doorbell etiquette and basic manners. She immediately looked Elliot up and down and said, "You're temporary. Eventually, she'll come to her senses." Her tone was sharp, self-righteous, and filled with the kind of entitlement I've been battling for years. Elliot, who usually keeps her cool in almost any situation, stayed calm and said, "You're not welcome here." My father, hovering behind her with that mix of anger and entitlement, immediately labeled Elliot as manipulative and accused her of turning me into someone I wasn't, as if I were a puppet and she the puppet master. That's when I lost it. I shouted, "Get out, both of you. You are no longer invited to the wedding. Leave immediately or I will call building security." They didn't budge. My mother screamed at the top of her lungs that I was choosing a stranger over blood. I yelled back, "Blood doesn't excuse abuse. You don't get a say in my life, my love, or my marriage." She countered, "You're ungrateful, selfish, and cold. Do you even know what family means?" I didn't hesitate. I shot back, "Family doesn't mean you get to treat people like property, manipulate my choices, or interfere in my marriage. You've spent weeks insulting Elliot, Marcus, and me, and you have the audacity to lecture me about love?" The shouting escalated further. I heard my father yelling over her, calling me unrecognizable, and accusing Elliot of destroying me. I yelled right back, "I am recognizable to myself for the first time in years. If Elliot had any role in this, it's that she finally gave me the courage to stand up to you." Every insult, every accusation, every claim of "you're going to regret this" was met with equal fire. I reminded them that Marcus was never better, that their judgment had nothing to do with my happiness, and that if they wanted to continue screaming, they could do it outside. Elliot stood beside me the entire time, calm but firm. She added, "Your behavior is unacceptable and you need to leave now." My parents tried to turn their anger onto her, claiming she was controlling me and poisoning our daughter. I yelled back, "You're angry because the person I choose is not the person you want. Deal with it." After what felt like an eternity of screaming, insults, and accusations, they finally left, but not before calling me cold, selfish, heartless, and completely unrecognizable. They stormed out, slamming the door in a way that rattled the walls. The next day, we sent out the wedding invitations. Their names were intentionally not on them. I double-checked each envelope, making sure there was no accidental inclusion. I wanted them to know that the decision was final, that their behavior had consequences, and that Elliot and I would not tolerate any more manipulation. Meanwhile, my phone exploded with messages from extended family. Some were shocked, some were angry, some tried to guilt me into reconsidering. I responded individually to every message. I told them that if they thought family meant interfering, manipulating, and attacking my fiancée, they had a very different definition of family than I did. I reminded them that the only person harming anyone here was my parents, by trying to replace me with Marcus. I also posted a brief note on Instagram clarifying that only people who support us, Elliot, and our choices were welcome at the wedding. That set off another wave of messages, Snapchats, and WhatsApp forwards from relatives calling me dramatic and selfish. I replied firmly and directly. I was not negotiating boundaries anymore. Update 5. By midweek, the calls and messages resumed, but angrier, sharper, more relentless. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years began messaging me, calling me heartless, dramatic, arrogant, and even possessed. One distant cousin messaged me on Instagram, claiming I was ruining the family's reputation and that I was completely unhinged. Another relative sent a Snapchat video lecture about how Elliot was manipulating me into rebellion. My phone was a constant barrage, pinging with insults across WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, even text messages. I didn't stay quiet. I replied individually to each one. To the cousin who called me unhinged, I wrote, "If protecting my relationship from manipulation makes me unhinged, then I embrace it." To the relative who claimed Elliot was controlling me, I fired back, "Respecting boundaries isn't control. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of policing other people's lives." To the others calling me arrogant, dramatic, or heartless, I wrote that their insults only proved why I had set boundaries in the first place. Then the situation situation escalated in a way I hadn't anticipated. Somehow, despite my efforts, someone leaked my wedding date to my parents. Within hours, my mother called, frantic and furious. She said they were planning to book the same venue for a vow renewal ceremony. Yes, really. They were trying to stage a fake wedding to fix things and show everyone that I'd made a mistake. I felt my blood boil. I yelled at them over the phone. You are not welcome anywhere near this wedding. You don't get to rewrite history, redo events, or erase the choices Elliot and I have made. My father jumped in yelling that Elliot was poisoning me and that I was a puppet under her influence. I shouted back, I am the only one controlling my life. You have zero authority over my choices. Elliot is not a puppet master. She's my fiancée, and we are building our life together without your interference. The yelling didn't stop there. My mother screamed that I was cold, selfish, and cruel. I yelled back that her behavior over the past 5 weeks was cruel, that her attempts to replace Elliot with Marcus and control my decisions were abusive, and that I would not tolerate it. Even extended family kept getting involved. Distant aunts, cousins, and even some neighbors who'd heard through gossip chains started messaging me, sending videos, and posting indirect comments online about how shocking my behavior was. I responded publicly and privately, calling out every lie, every insult, and every attempt to manipulate the narrative. I reminded them that Marcus was the one who had treated me poorly, that Elliot had done nothing but support me, and that my parents' interference had crossed every boundary. The venue issue escalated too. My parents somehow contacted the booking manager, asking about dates, telling them they wanted to host a family reconciliation event, and claiming I had excluded them unfairly. I immediately called the manager, verified my dates were secure, and sent a firm email stating that no one else was authorized to book events at our wedding location. Update 6. My father decided to take his anger public. Early Monday morning, I saw a notification. He had posted a long, rambling Facebook rant about losing a daughter to influence and how Elliot was turning me into someone unrecognizable. The post was tagged with almost every relative's name and several mutual friends, making it painfully visible. I couldn't ignore it. I commented directly on the post. You lost me when you tried to replace my fiancé like a bad investment. Stop pretending this is about me and start owning your behavior. Within 10 minutes, the post was deleted, but the damage was already done. Screenshots were circulating in family group chats, sparking arguments I wasn't even part of yet. That same day, my mother called. I should have expected it. The first words out of her mouth were screaming, "You've embarrassed us. You've humiliated the family." Her voice cracked with fury and self-pity at the same time. I stayed calm at first, but the calm didn't last. I told her, embarrassment requires shame. You clearly don't have any, so you're just angry that I won't comply with your delusions. She yelled that I was cruel, ungrateful, and that I'd turn my back on everyone who had ever loved me. I yelled back, my voice rising. Turning my back on manipulation is not cruelty. Listening to myself is not betrayal. Your entire campaign to control my marriage proves exactly how little you respect me. Then came the extended family. I started receiving dozens of messages, Snapchats, and WhatsApp notifications accusing me of being dramatic, spoiled, and unloving. One cousin claimed I had destroyed the family's unity and that Elliot was destroying me. I responded individually to each one, yelling through text, "You are defending someone who tried to replace my partner. You are not defending me. Stop pretending this is loyalty. It's complicity." Meanwhile, more insults poured in. Marcus, of course, was lurking. He sent a passive-aggressive message on Instagram, implying that I was overreacting and that Elliot was controlling my every move. I replied with a long, scathing message detailing exactly why I left him, why Elliot is the opposite of controlling, and why he had no right to comment on my life. He blocked me again, probably assuming silence would protect him from further criticism. By midweek, my parents had launched a full-scale smear campaign on Snapchat and WhatsApp. Photos from old family events were being captioned with "She's changed," influenced by outsiders, and "Elliot isn't real family." I countered by posting on my Instagram story and directly messaging people, "Stop spreading lies about my fiancé. Stop spreading lies about me. Stop trying to rewrite reality. The only person manipulating anyone here is the person sending this." That led to another round of screaming phone calls. My mother accused me of turning everyone against her. My father shouted that Elliot was brainwashing me and that I was throwing away decades of family history. I yelled that no one was brainwashing me, just letting me live without interference. I told them every insult, every manipulation, and every attempt to gaslight me had backfired. I told them that I would not tolerate anyone calling Elliot a manipulator, and if they wanted to continue, they would be ignored or blocked. Update 7. I found a meticulously itemized list. Everything they had paid for while I was growing up. School tuition, piano lessons, dance classes, vacations, gifts, cars, you name it. Alongside each item was a note on what they had sacrificed and a calculated suggestion of what I owed them now. It was absurd and infuriating. I stared at it for a long time, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. How could they reduce an entire lifetime of parent-child interaction to a ledger of debts and payments? I immediately grabbed a black Sharpie and wrote in bold letters across the top, "Love is not a debt." I took a picture of it for record-keeping and mailed it back without another word. As expected, the retaliation didn't take long. My phone immediately blew up. My father called screaming that I was ungrateful and heartless, that I had disrespected everything they had done. I yelled back, "Disrespect? You tried to replace my fiancé. You gave my number to Marcus. You think manipulating and gaslighting is love." My mother joined the call, crying and shouting simultaneously. She accused me of destroying the family and claimed Elliot had turned me into a monster. I yelled that I was finally standing up for myself, that the only monster here was their sense of entitlement and manipulation. I reminded them that trying to swap me for Marcus, publicly shame me, and dictate my wedding plans was abusive, not nurturing. The extended family, of course, got involved again. Cousins, aunts, uncles, even distant relatives I barely spoke to messaged me on Instagram, Snapchat, and WhatsApp. One cousin sent a 10-minute voice note ranting about how betrayal isn't worth celebrating and called me cold and unfeeling. I responded with a long message. "Betrayal is thinking you can dictate my marriage, that I owe you for every penny you ever spent, and that you can demean my fiancé without consequences. That's not loyalty, that's manipulation." Marcus also made one last futile attempt. He slid into my Instagram DMs, passive-aggressively implying that Elliot was controlling me again. I replied firmly, detailing exactly why he had no right to contact me, why Elliot had never controlled me, and why his own actions were a prime example of manipulation. Then I blocked him for good, cutting the final thread of his interference. Even the wedding venue drama flared again. My parents somehow contacted the manager, claiming they had rights and attempting to book dates for some fake reconciliation event. I called, emailed, and messaged the venue, leaving a clear line: no one but us is authorized. Any interference will be legally addressed. My fiancé helped me document everything meticulously. By midweek, I had blocked my parents on all platforms: Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Messenger, and my phone. Any attempt at communication was automatically deleted. I made it absolutely clear that there would be no negotiation, no apologies, and no interference in our lives or wedding. Despite the onslaught, Elliot and I stood together. She handled much of the logistics and online countering, making sure we kept control over the narrative. Every insult, every threat, every passive-aggressive family message was met with a firm boundary or a direct, scathing response. By the end of week 7, it was crystal clear my parents were not going to be a part of our wedding, and nothing they did could change that. Their obsession with sacrifices, their manipulation, their smears, it all ended here. The wedding would happen, surrounded only by people who actually wanted us there, and we would not allow anyone else to dictate our happiness. Even after weeks of yelling, insults, social media chaos, manipulations, and threats, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The battle was exhausting, infuriating, and emotionally draining, but it was finally over. The final blow had been dealt, boundaries were firmly in place, and Elliot and I could focus on the life we were building together, without interference from anyone who refused to respect it. The end. Parents idolized abusive ex-Marcus because he looked good on paper, then spent years trashing steady, respectful fiancé Elliot as plain and temporary. When you got engaged, they calmly pitched dumping Elliot because divorced Marcus would take you back and elevate you more. You said no and uninvited them unless they apologized. They exploded: guilt trips, flying monkeys, smear campaigns, itemized childhood bills, fake venue bookings, and public rants about Elliot poisoning you. You held the line, posted receipts, blocked the noise, and kept them off the guest list. AITA? NTA. Not even close. You didn't destroy the family. You finally stopped letting them destroy your happiness. Choosing a healthy partner over toxic meddlers isn't betrayal, it's self-respect. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments, and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for refusing to cover my siblings' catastrophic $20 million disaster. Click here to watch it now.